The announcement spread across the Allied frontier like a quiet shockwave that moved faster than any vessel could travel. Humans across the stations whispered about it. Other species debated it in their councils, and even the neutral trade guilds paused their usual chatter. None of them understood why an honored warrior of the Leora Dominion, a race known for strict traditions and reserved dignity, had walked before her people and declared a single strange request. As her reward for saving her world from collapse, she did not ask for land, rank, relics, or command. She asked for a human. His name was Alan. Alan himself heard the news 3 days late. He was on a solitary survey shift aboard a research vessel that tracked comet dust across a remote sector. When the message came through, the com officer read it twice before saying anything. Alan listened in disbelief, wondering if it was some political misunderstanding. He had never spoken to this alien woman. He had not worked alongside her. He had not even been in the same sector during the war that had saved her world. Yet the record was clear. Before the Leora High Assembly, she had spoken without hesitation. She said she desired Alan as her reward. The research crew tried to reassure him. They told him it must be an error or some kind of symbolic gesture. Alan wished he could believe that. He tried to sleep during the cycle, but his mind kept replaying one question. Why him? When the order arrived for him to return to the Frontier Council headquarters, he obeyed. The council ship escorted him under formal protocol. None of them spoke about the request directly. They simply maintained a polite distance from the human who had somehow become the center of a diplomatic storm. Alan felt like he was being carried into a spotlight he never asked for. The trip passed in uneasy silence. The headquarters was a sphere of mirrored alloy that floated above a calm artificial world. Alan had been there once as a trainee, but this time every step felt heavier. The halls were filled with observers from 6 species, all whispering as he walked by. Some had eyes that glowed like crystals. Others had translucent skin that shimmered with the station light. Their attention made him uncomfortable. He wondered if he would ever walk through a corridor without feeling watched. In the central chamber, the council waited. Representatives sat in curved seats, like an amphitheater that rose toward the polished ceiling. At the center was a raised platform with a transparent floor that projected records, maps, and diplomatic texts. Standing near was the alien woman who had caused all of this. She was known as Riala of the Leora Dominion. Riala stood tall and composed, her posture straight, her gaze firm. Her skin held a faint shimmer like moonlit stone. Her hair flowed behind her like strands of silver reflecting distant stars. Alan had seen holograms of the Leora before, but none matched her exact presence. She seemed carved from quiet certainty. When she looked at Alan, she did not show regret or confusion. She looked as if she had been waiting when she greeted him. Her voice resonated with melodic clarity that reminded him of wind through chimes. She bowed her head lightly. She said she was honored he had come. Alan felt every pair of eyes on him. He returned the bow. He asked why she requested him. Riala answered without hesitation. She said that during the crisis on her homeworld, she had studied every recorded action taken by the allied species. She learned about strategies used by different military leaders. She learned about every pilot who risked their life. She learned about every scientist who offered assistance. In that sea of information, she found one detailed report she read repeatedly. It was written by a human cadet named Alan. It contained a simple observation about resource distribution that later helped guide supply routes in the war. She said the clarity of his thought saved thousands. She said that when her world survived, she remembered the name of the human who had offered the insight. Alan felt stunned. He remembered writing that report. He wrote it late at night during a training rotation. He had not known anyone outside his instructors would ever read it. Yet here stood someone who said it changed the fate of her world. The council asked Riala to clarify her request. She said the Leora tradition permitted a hero to ask for a companion who represented the value they treasured most. She said Alan represented insight and resolve. She said she wished to invite him into her household so she could learn from him and honor the mind that had offered guidance in their darkest hour. Alan felt his heart pound. He never imagined his small act mattered so far beyond his sight. He asked what she expected from him. She said she expected only his presence and his wisdom. She said no one would force him to accept. She said she respected the choice of every free being. The council deliberated. They whispered among themselves, while Alan and Riala waited in silence. The decision came at last. They declared that since the request was symbolic and non-binding, it could be accepted if Alan agreed. All eyes shifted toward him again. Alan asked for time to think. They granted him 3 days. Riala bowed again and left without protest. When she passed by him, he noticed she carried a subtle emotion in her eyes. It was not pride or triumph. It was something like gratitude. The next 3 days were restless ones. Alan walked the synthetic gardens of the station, watched the rivers of light weave across the skies, and tried to imagine what his life might become. He had planned to continue his research career. He enjoyed quiet observations, not the center of political attention. Yet Riala had spoken with sincerity. She had not demanded anything. She had asked with respect. Alan wondered whether anyone had ever valued his words that deeply before. He met Riala once during his reflection period. She approached him while he stood near a balcony, overlooking the swirling clouds below. She did not pressure him. She simply stood beside him and watched the view. After a long pause, she said she wished to explain something more. She told him that her people believed greatness was not measured solely by dramatic acts, but by moments in which someone looked beyond themselves. She said his report demonstrated that quality. She said she felt compelled to honor that. She asked if her presence unsettled him. Alan admitted he felt overwhelmed. She nodded and said she understood. She said if he refused, she would still honor him in her prayers. Her words stayed in his mind long after she left. Alan realized her request was not about possession or rank. It was about recognition. It was about acknowledging a connection formed not through battle, but through a shared moment of understanding across 2 distant cultures. When the 3 days ended, Alan returned to the chamber. The council gathered again. Riala stood in the same place as before. Alan took a deep breath and announced his choice. He said he would accept the invitation. A wave of murmurs filled the chamber. Riala lowered her head with serene respect. The council approved the arrangement. They formalized his transfer under a diplomatic cultural exchange program. Alan felt a mix of fear and resolve as he stepped toward Riala, welcomed him with a calm gesture, and invited him to join her journey home. The vessel that carried them to the Leora Dominion was unlike any human ship. Its hull curved like flowing water. Its interior pulsed with dim blue lines that shifted like living veins. The crew treated Alan with quiet curiosity. Some studied him from a distance. Others bowed politely to him, recognizing his connection to their honored warrior. Riala remained near him throughout the voyage. She guided him through their customs and answered every question he asked. During the trip, they spoke often. Alan learned that Riala had trained since childhood for the role she now held. She had fought in multiple conflicts, negotiated with rival clans, and carried the burden of preserving her culture. Yet she spoke of her world with warmth. She described the crystalline forests that glowed beneath the twin moons. She described the sound of their ocean tides echoing through stone caverns. She described the harvest festivals where children chased light birds through the fields. Her voice softened whenever she spoke of home. Alan slowly understood that she had not asked for him as a prize. She had asked as someone wishing to share her world with someone who had touched it from afar. He began to feel less like a reluctant participant and more like a chosen guest. When the vessel entered Leora space, Alan saw a sight that filled him with awe. Great floating cities drifted above bright oceans. Tall towers of silver stone rose from islands shaped by centuries of careful architecture. Energy bridges linked platforms that shimmered like woven starlight. Alan felt as though he had stepped into a dream dot as the ship landed. Crowds gathered to greet Riala. She walked with confident steps, but Alan could see the subtle tension in her posture. She was respected by many, but still carried the weight of leadership. When she presented Alan, the crowd reacted with a mix of wonder and confusion. Some bowed, some whispered, some stared. Alan felt self-conscious, but Riala assured him it would ease in time. She brought him to her household, a vast structure built into the side of a cliff overlooking a glowing valley. Inside were halls adorned with radiant crystals that shifted hues with the passing hours. Servants greeted them with polite gestures. Riala introduced Alan as an honored companion. They accepted him with respectful curiosity. Over the following weeks, Alan learned the rhythms of Leora life. He joined Riala in morning meditations during which they stood high.